The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sewagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machinde, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besige every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good evening. Welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Edgar Marthew Karuhanga. This evening, I have a lady called Dr. Sarah Bireete. She is a lawyer, a human rights defender, but also the executive director for the Center for Constitutional Governance. You're most welcome.
Thank you for hosting me, and good evening, viewers and listeners.
Let's start on the issue that is happening in the General Court Martial right about now. This week, we saw one of the lawyers for Dr. Kiza Besige being incarcerated and imprisoned in the General Court Martial for contempt of court. Firstly, what do you think about this gentleman's arrest, a fellow lawyer like yourself?
Well, I think the whole environment for practice of advocates under the court martial, but also the reason that takes them there, the trial of civilians in court martial, needs to be reviewed. Under the doctrine of separation of powers, the executive should concentrate on service delivery. The army as a pillar of state falls under the executive, and their job is protection of territorial integrity of Uganda and sovereign rights of Ugandans through national security. The role to administer justice under Article 126 of the Constitution belongs to the judiciary. The legislature does work of lawmaking, budget appropriation, and oversight. So once we have a fusion of the executive wanting to administer justice through the army, then we have a crisis that we have been driven into through the dilemma in the court martial.
One would say that the court martial is sanctioned by the constitution of this country, so it is allowed to actually do its work.
Ideally, military courts are meant for discipline of officers of the army, the same way we have police tribunals. Have we ever found a problem with police tribunal in this country? But when the police officers are out of line, they are dealt with under their disciplinary courts. So this should be the same way that we look at military courts as a way of instilling discipline within the military soldiers. That's why military courts sit in the field. You make a mistake in the operation, they sit one day, and we don't have a problem with that. Deal with the soldiers. So, but when it comes to dealing with citizens, we have a problem with that. We have a problem with the UPDF trying to make itself into an appendix of the judiciary, because that violates the principle of the doctrine of separation of powers. There was a mistake that was made in the UPDF Act to say that when civilians are caught in conditions that look like those of the army, then you try them in the army, which was a big mistake by the parliament then. The court in Banjul, the African Court for Human and People's Rights in Banjul ruled in 2014 that Uganda should amend the UPDF Act and remove all clauses that concern citizens.
Okay.
Uganda government has failed to do that. Our own constitutional court has ruled twice that it is unconstitutional to try civilians in military courts.
So why are we...
The Supreme Court has become
First finish.
a thick neck towards this problem instead of being a solution.
Okay, before we look at it as you're playing the devil's advocate here for the General Court Martial, let's look at the case itself of Counsel Aaron Kiza, the contempt. Don't you look at the character, the way he was speaking, and the disrespect he has for judicial officers in the General Court Martial? Don't you think that it's a valid base to sentence him to 9 months in prison?
Let me tell you, we don't know the circumstances through which advocates were facing in this court. These are advocates that are trained to work in civil courts, where laws are respected, where everybody respects themselves, and where everybody keeps in line, in their line. But they find themselves in a strange territory because the court is dragging civilians into their arena. So you can't tell what has happened unless you are fully aware of the facts.
Okay.
I cannot say that Counsel Aaron Kiza was out of line.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. We have seen several times the military court manhandling civilians, manhandling advocates in these courts. But also, if I may go, because I am not fully aware of what transpired, but if I may go to the charge, you know, the contempt of court is a charge that is a preserve of judicial courts. The military court, which is a tribunal, trying to invoke this case as if they have also powers to handle matters of contempt, is in question. It is something that should be understood. Because if you are a military tribunal,